Hello everyone and welcome back to the lecture series for the preparation of your CLAT examination. In this particular lecture series, we are discussing about the important aspects in regards to the legal reasoning portion of your CLAT syllabus. We are focusing specifically over the CLAT syllabus and we are discussing about the important aspects of your legal reasoning which are going to be there in your CLAT examination. So far, in this particular lecture series, we have completed a majority of the important legislations. We have completed the law of torts, we have completed the constitution, we have completed the criminal law, and from past few lectures, we are discussing about the United Nations and the international law. So specifically focusing over our aim towards the United Nations and understanding what are the different organizations it has, what are the specialized organs it has, and what exactly how the questions will be put up in front of us when we are going to sit for our CLAT examination. So our focus is again back only towards the important areas which will be covered and which is often asked in the CLAT examination. So we are specifically focusing our agenda and our goal towards that particular areas only. Starting with what we have covered so far in our United Nations Charter. So so far we have discussed about what exactly is the principle and the purpose and what exactly is the preamble. What is the preamble of the United Nations Charter saying, what exactly is its aim and objective. It's very important for your CLAT examination point of view because obviously the questions will be put up in front of you in the same manner. They will be asking you questions in regards to what exactly is the preamble saying, what are the things that has been written in the preamble, and then obviously what is the principles according to what are the principles of United Nations, and then what exactly is the purpose. So purpose and principles has been enumerated in the Article 1 and 2. So let's try to revise it quickly and then we'll move forward and we'll start the remaining of the articles of the United Nations Charter. So this is the preamble. You remember the preamble. We have done that. We have understood what exactly the preamble is saying. Important. Obviously, we have covered this in our previous videos. Just a quick revision for you. And then what exactly is our goal? Then we have studied about the purposes. The purpose has been mentioned in Article 1. Then what exactly is the purposes? Then Article 2, we are talking about the principles. So what exactly the principles that we are going to follow? The first, we need a purpose. The purpose has been enumerated under Article 1. Now, what will be the principles? What will be the rules that will be following in order to achieve those purposes has been enumerated under Article 2. Okay. So all these things we have discussed. If you wish to understand it again, then obviously you can refer to the previous video so that it will be helpful for you. But these things are important in regards to your CLAT examinations because I have already told you that the questions that will be put up in front of you will not be from in-depth knowledge of what exactly maybe Article 37 of this United Nations Charter is saying. You won't be getting the questions like that. But what are the important aspects? What are the important areas? So Chapter 1, which is Article 1 and 2, which is talking about the principle and purpose, in itself is a very important area. And you will be getting questions from, if not from Article 1, then obviously from Article 2. And if not from Article 1 and 2, then definitely from the preamble. So this is how the mechanism works when you talk about CLAT examination. The important areas needs to be covered up in a thorough manner so that if anything comes up from this particular areas, you will be able to answer. And those areas which are not that important, but still they are in the syllabus. For that, you need to cover up. You need to at least understand what that particular area is saying. For example, what exactly 37 section is Article 37 of the United Nations Charter is saying. So these things you need to get an idea so that once the question will be there, those questions will not be from in-depth knowledge of those articles. They will be superficial questions that will be put up from those particular articles. For example, they can ask you under the Article 37, what exactly has been mentioned? And they will be giving you 4 options and it will be easier for you to mark it. But then the questions that will be there in regards to your principles, then they might ask you that according to the Article 2, which is describing the principles, what are the preventive actions force? Who are responsible to take the preventive and enforcement actions against any foreign invasions that takes place, or if there is any atrocity or if there is any conflict, then you will be given 4 options. So this amount of knowledge will be questioned and will be put up in task in front of all the CLAT aspirants when it comes to the important areas. So important areas we will be covering up in details, and not so important areas we will be covering it, but superficially, not in details. But yes, obviously the important areas will be covered from those points also. So I suppose you've understood what Article 2 is saying, that we have already discussed it. And now what Article 3 is saying is talking about the membership. This is also we have done. If you need any understanding or clarification, kindly refer to the previous videos. You will be able to understand it. This is all about that. Now, Article 6 also we have discussed. We are talking about all the organs of the United Nations, the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the Trusteeship Council, the International Court of Justice, and the Secretariat. Then other organs can also be created if, according to the present charter, if it is found necessary. Then Article 7 is talking about the United Nations Charter shall place no restriction that there will be equality between men and women. Now, from today itself, we are going to start with the organs of the United Nations. So these organs are perhaps very important for you to understand, because once you are able to understand the organs, the composition you have understood, the work of that particular organ you have understood, then it is good to go. You have completed the international law area, the international law syllabus of your CLAT examinations, and anything that will be put up. Yes, apart from the case laws. So case laws is something that I will compile it and we will be using it in one go. So what we will do is we will first complete the constitution, then we'll complete the contract, and in synchronized order, we will be completing the whole case laws of all the important subjects. So international law also contains a lot of important case laws that are often asked in your CLAT examination. So we will be covering those areas also. But apart from that, all the factual information that is important, and what all are the syllabus that is being compiled by the CLAT consortium, that all these things we are going to cover. So right now we are going to discuss about the factual information, the information that is going to be asked to you in form of passages, and then obviously we'll be going to discuss about the case laws also and the Latin maxims also. So let's move forward and let's try to understand what exactly the organ, the General Assembly, the organ of the United Nations, is composed of. So the composition of United Nations General Assembly has been mentioned in Article 9. Important for you to remember. The reason being because it is talking about the composition. There can be a direct question under which article the composition of the General Assembly has been mentioned, under which chapter the composition of this General Assembly has been mentioned. So these information you need to remember. The General Assembly shall consist of all the members of the United Nations. Okay. So that is very clear, that General Assembly shall have all the members of the United Nations. Whomsoever is the member of the United Nations shall be the member of the General Assembly also. Now, each member shall have not more than 5 representatives in the General Assembly. I have just explained to you that what in the previous video we have explained that if it is talking about India, I'm so sorry again, I'm just making a rough map for your understanding. And if we talk about India, then there will be not more than 5 representatives from India that will be representing India. Where? In the General Assembly. Okay. Now, functions and powers. General Assembly may discuss any question or matters within the scope of the present chapter or relating to the power and functions of any organ provided for in the present charter. Okay. And except as provided under Article 12, we'll discuss what exactly is Article 12 saying, may make recommendation to the members of the United Nations or to the Security Council or to both, or any such question or matter. Okay. So they will be assisting the Security Council. Now, if I'll just rephrase it for you, the power and functions. The first function is to work for United Nations. Second is all the principles and the purpose. The purpose and the principles that has been enumerated in Article 1 and 2. The General Assembly will obviously be focusing over those purposes and principles. Okay. Matters within the scope of the present chapter relating to the power and functions of any organs. Second is work over the power and functions. Power and functions. Of what? Of organs of United Nations. Okay. and except as provided in Article 12. So obviously we'll be discussing Article 12. At that point of time, you will be able to understand it. Let's just quickly overlook it so that it becomes easier for you. It is talking about the Secretary General. With the consent of the Security Council, shall notify the General Assembly at each session of any matter relative to the maintenance of international peace and security, which are being dealt with by the Security Council, and shall similarly notify the General Assembly or members of the United Nations if the General Assembly is not in session. Immediately, the Security Council cease to deal with such matter. Okay, so here it has been a power that has been provided to the Secretary General. Okay, that he will, with the consent of the Security Council, shall notify the General Assembly about any of each matter relative to the maintenance of international peace and security. So if there is any matter which is in relation to the international peace and security, which is being dealt by the Security Council, United Nations General Assembly shall not intervene in between. This is the only exception that has been enumerated under the power and functions that has been enumerated under Article 10 of the General Assembly. So General Assembly shall do all the work that has been enumerated under Article 10, but if the Security Council is doing something in relation to the preservation of peace and security on international basis, so at that point of time, the General Assembly shall not, I repeat, the General Assembly shall not intervene in between. So that is the main crux of Article 12 that has been enumerated here, except is provided under Article 12. May make recommendations to the members of the United Nations or to the Security Council. This is power and functions. And third is make representations, recommendations. So these are the three major aspects or the major points which has to be understood in regards to Article 3, which is talking about the power and functions of the General Assembly. Now, next is the General Assembly, Article 11. What is Article 11 saying? The General Assembly may consider the general principles of cooperation in the maintenance of international peace and security, including the principles governing disarmament and the regulations of armament, and may make recommendations with regard to such principles to the members or the Security Councils. So, what are we going to follow? The General Assembly is going to follow the general principles of cooperation. Okay. Now, what is exactly general principles of cooperation? Question is, what is the general principle of cooperation? It means that all the members of the United Nations shall adhere. If you remember the principle, if you remember the purpose and the principle that has been enumerated in Article 1 and 2, you will come to an understanding that when we talk about the principles, we are talking about the general cooperation itself. Meaning which, if there is any need from one country, it is obviously the rule according to the United Nations Charter that the other country will come up, whosoever are the members of the United Nations, that will come up and will try to help and assist in cooperating in order to ensure that the maintenance of international peace and security is taking place. And that is why you must have observed that when this particular war in relation to Ukraine and Russia is going on, there are other countries who are trying to cooperate, they are trying to manage, they are trying to mitigate things out. So they are trying to stop the war. Why? Because since they are being the members of the United Nations, they are trying to have the general principles of cooperation, which is required for the maintenance of international peace and security. And that is what they are doing. And that is how they are following Article 11, which is talking about the general principles of cooperation that needs to be followed by the United Nations General Assembly whenever there is a need to maintain international peace and security. And what else they will do apart from the general principles of cooperation, they will also follow the general principles governing what? Disarmament. Now, what is disarmament? Disarmament means that we will not resort to the use of weapons. Rather, we'll try to mitigate things around. We'll try to cooperate and we'll try to loosen the situation. We'll try to calm the situation by diplomatic talks and not more than that. And the regulation of armaments and mimic. Now, what is one here? It is saying that talking about governing disarmaments, and another saying is the regulation of armaments. So the students might get confused here. No, disarmaments, we will not encourage, we will not adhere to use of weapons in order to fight other country, in order to use force against other country. But if some country by their own will or action attacks another country which is being the member of the United Nations, they will also help in the regulation of armaments. We need armaments in order to protect ourselves, and we will make sure that the armaments, that whatsoever arsenal that we are going to use, are within the scope and within the ambit, and it is not dangerous, that it is like maybe the atomic bombs that were put up or that were thrown over the Japan. So Japan had two cities, one being Hiroshima, another being Nagasaki, and both of these cities were hit by atomic bomb, and which caused severe injuries, as if the generations were, they were handicapped. So obviously this type of bombing and everything should not be allowed and should not be there too. So that is why it is important to have regulation over the armaments, that what type of weapons a particular country is carrying. For example, if there is one country, Russia, let's take the example of Russia. Russia has all the armaments, nuclear weapons, everything, it is there. So it becomes, obviously it is clear that that particular country will have more dominance because it has more powers. So in order to make sure that there is a balance of power, every country is having almost equivalent powers, there is a need of armament also. Because yes, diplomatic relations is one thing, but if you resort to violence and you have unlimited arsenal in your godown or in your backing, then obviously it will be very easier for you to dominate the other country. And that is what we don't want. We want cooperation, not dominance. And that is why regulation of armament becomes also important in regards to the General Assembly principles and powers that needs to be fulfilled, and make recommendation with regard to such principles to the members or to the Security Council. Now, all these principles that needs to be followed, cooperations, giving disarmament, and regulation of armaments. This is first, this is second, and this is third. So apart from all these things, if there is any changes that needs to be done, then how the regulation of armaments will be done, how maintenance of international peace of security by resorting to the general principles of cooperation will be done, and how the principles governing the disarmament shall be maintained. All these things, all the recommendations shall also be given by the General Assembly in regards to these principles. Now again, what is it saying? It is saying that the General Assembly may discuss any questions relating to the maintenance of international peace and security brought before it by any members of the United Nations, or even by the Security Council, or by a state which is even not the member of the United Nations, in accordance with Article 35, which is talking about non-member nations, paragraph 2, and except as provided under Article 12, which is saying that if Security Council is dealing with anything, General Assembly will not intervene. May make recommendation with regard to such question to the state or state concerned, or to the Security Council, or both. So it can make recommendations just the way our president can make recommendations to the cabinet ministry that how they need to function, but obviously it is considered to be a nominal head. In the same manner, General Assembly can also make recommendation what is the question that has been put up in front of them. They will make recommendation that you can do this, you can do that, and accordingly it is the will of the country that how they are going to revamp. But it is obviously not obligatory. This is very important point. You need to remember this, that the recommendation that has been given by the General Assembly, it is not obligation, but it is a recommendation. It is not like that it is compulsory to be followed. But yes, it has to be adhered to. Okay. Any such question on which action is necessary shall be referred to the Security Council by the General Assembly either before or after the discussion. So each and every matter shall be obviously be dealt by the Security Council. So if we compare it by the Indian government, and why am I discussing this thing with you, that why are we comparing the General Assembly with the Indian government? The reason being, once you have an idea, once you've understood, yes, you have understood that what is the exact structure of the Indian government. You know what is Parliament, what is Legislative Council, what is what exactly is your executive, what exactly is judiciary. So in the same manner, if you can correlate it, then it will be easier for you to remember it. So you can understand that the General Assembly is almost acting like the President of India. And the Security Council is more and more acting like the cabinet ministers. Okay, not equal, but equivalent. So there is a difference. If we're talking about equivalent, it means yes, some part of those areas or the actions or the work of these organs are perhaps the same, but they are not exactly equal. There is a lot of difference between Security Council and executives on one side, and the General Assembly and the President on one side. But yes, if we talk about the similarity, the General Assembly, in the same manner, the President can make a recommendation, but it is not obligatory over the cabinet ministers. In the same manner, the General Assembly can also make recommendation, but it shall not be compulsory or obligatory over the Security Council or any of the state who are going to ask for any general question in regards to any matter which is in relation to the maintenance of peace and security or any purposes that has been mentioned under Article 1. I suppose you are able to understand what am I trying to explain to you guys. So this is important. Article 11 has been discussed, and yes, after all the discussions and everything, the matter shall be referred to the Security Council. Very important point. Very important point here, that every matter after due discussions shall be referred to the Security Council in regards to that particular question. The General Assembly may call the attention of the Security Council to a situation which is likely to endanger international peace and security. So call the attention means that there is a General Assembly, and if, for example, there is a war going on, Ukraine and Russia. Now, initially, this war was it was a conflict between two nations, and obviously there was not a very alarming situation at that point of time. So obviously no action was taken at that point of time. But slowly and gradually, when it took it became important. So what General Assembly did, the members of the General Assembly voted for this particular case, that whether this particular conflict between Ukraine and Russia is by anyhow possible endangering the international peace and security. And it was given in an affirmative that yes, this is actually causing a problem in regards to international peace and security, and there are concerns. And at that point of time, the General Assembly made a recommendation to the Security Council that the international peace and security is being endangered because of the conflict between the Ukraine and Russia. And now there are talks, there are cooperative measures that is being taken by the Security Council, the members of the Security Council, as well as the members of the General Assembly, in order to mitigate the things around between Ukraine and Russia. But as you all know, that there are still talks going on, and let's hope for the best that might be in future, or maybe whenever you're going to see this video, the particular war between Ukraine and Russia might have ended. But as of now, the war is still going on, and it is important for you to understand that how the United Nations can help in bringing the international peace and security, or restoring the international peace and security. So this is the mechanism that they will be following. General Assembly will inform the Security Council that there is an danger to international peace and security, and accordingly the Security Council shall work. The power of the General Assembly set forth in this article shall not limit the general scope of Article 10. General scope, which is talking about any questions that has been put up by the members of the United Nations organizations, or non-members of the United Nations, or or by the Security Council. Any question that has been put up in front of the General Assembly, it has to be answered, and it will not be limited by the scope that is required. It is in relation to international peace and security, and if it is in relation to international peace and security, and it has to be informed to the Security Council, it is the duty of the General Assembly to intimate them that these are there are security threats to the international peace, and that is why it is necessary for you to intervene, the Security Council to intervene, and accordingly the Security Council shall intervene in between. Okay, while the Security Council is exercising in respect of dispute or situation the function assigned to it in the present charter, the General Assembly shall not make any recommendation with regard to that dispute or situation unless the Security Council so requests. Meaning with this is General Assembly and this is Security Council. And let's assume that this is the matter. Now, once this particular matter has been shifted from General Assembly to the Security Council, until unless the Security Council, don't assume that it is Supreme Court. No, it is Security Council. Okay, and this is General Assembly. So if there is any matter that has been recommended by the General Assembly to the Security Council, until unless Security Council has not disposed of that case, disposed of, or asked for recommendation of, the General Assembly shall not interfere in between any of the matters that has been given to the Security Council. Once the Security Council has completed the task and it has not been now pending, the dispute has been resolved, then obviously the General Assembly can say or give their recommendation, but not prior to that. Okay, let's read it again. When the Security Council is exercising in respect of a dispute or situation the functions assigned to it in the present charter, the General Assembly shall not make any recommendation with regard to that particular dispute or situation unless Security Council so requests. I suppose it is clear to you. Article 12, we have just completed, so I suppose you need not get again into that particular areas. You can just have a quick reading over the same and you will be able to understand it. Now, Article 13. Article 13, it is talking about the general purpose or if I say the functions of General Assembly, the general functions. What will be that? It will initiate studies and make recommendation for the purpose of, what is that? Promoting international cooperation. So it will initiate studies and make recommendations for what? For promotion of international cooperation in the political field and encouraging the progressive development of international law. That is, international law is one part of United Nations being one part of the international law. So it will obviously encourage the development of the international law also, United Nations General Assembly and its codification. Because as you know, the General Assembly is working for the codification of international law. Why? Because earlier the international law is nothing but it is more about the treaties, the conventions, and the arrangements or the agreements between the two nations. But we need a codified form, the way we have the way we have the Constitution of India. The same way, we should have some codified international law so it becomes more authentic and more easier to implement. Promoting, this is one point, that there should be studies which is in relation to these aspects. Then promoting international cooperation in the economic, social, cultural, educational, health field and assisting in the realization of human rights, fundamental freedoms for all and without distinction to sex, race, religion. So basically, they will promote the welfare of the nations and without discrimination. In short, it is what that is explaining, and it is expected from the General Assembly's function. And then there is one more responsibilities, the further for responsibilities, functions and powers of the General Assembly with respect to the matters mentioned above are set forth in chapters. Okay, so this is something that you need not study as of now because it is relations to chapter number 9 and 10. Obviously, we will be covering the same. Now, what is Article 14 saying? Subject to the provisions, the General Assembly may make a recommendation for the peaceful adjustment of any situation, regardless of origin, which is deemed likely to impair the general welfare of the friendly relations among the nations, including situations resulting from violation of the provisions of the present charter, setting forth the purpose and principles of the United Nations. So this is nothing. It is just saying that if there is any other recommendations that the General Assembly wish to give, then obviously they can give. But obviously it is subjected to Article 12. So if it is being given to the Security Council, then obviously they cannot comment or they cannot give any recommendations as such. So we have completed Article 9, 10, 11 and 12, 13 and 14 in this particular lecture. And we have tried to understand what exactly is the general powers and composition, power functions and compositions of General Assembly. And we have tried to understand that if the Security Council has been given any task, if they are doing any task, at that point of time, the General Assembly shall not intervene in between. With this, I would like to end today's video. And obviously, we are not taking this video to a longer extent, because these are very important aspects and these are very important points that you need to understand. And if we move forward with another new aspect or the new organ, that is the Security Council, obviously you will get confused. So it is better for you to understand all these articles in a combined manner together, so that your retention is more, your understanding is more, and your way of answering the question will be more effective. With this, I would again like to thank you all for being present in this particular lecture series. I would request you to fulfill the 3 principles, the 3 P's: principles, purpose, and persistency, which is the main agent, or if I will say the main key to crack your CLAT examination. And also please make sure that you are consistently practicing your previous year mock question papers. And also we are going to start very quickly the important questions, the discussions of the important questions that are being asked in your CLAT examinations. And obviously, after completion of this particular lecture series, we will be discussing about the case laws also, which is important and which has often been asked. So again, I would like to thank you all. In the next lecture series, what we are going to do, we are going to study about the Security Council. The same way we have studied about the General Assembly, we are going to study the Security Council and then moving forward to the other organs. After that, once it is completed, we will just quickly revise all the important things that we have studied, and then we'll move to the last subject of your CLAT syllabus, and that is intellectual property rights. With this, again, I would like to thank you all, guys.